Welcome everyone to The Rift. I am your co-host, Jeremy Culver, aka Darsay.
And I'm Kyledoom, Gloria.
Kyle, we are back for week 2 of the video podcast, plus our podcast over on SoundCloud.com. Kyle, we had a very interesting week 1. Obviously, neither your team nor mine are looking the best at the moment. Obviously, mine looking way, way worse.
And I will
But
say my team had a very hard schedule. So.
Yours did. I'm just saying, record-wise, we're not looking the way we thought we would start.
Mm-hmm.
But mine obviously looking way, way worse. Which is something we will get into at some point in this show. But Kyle, as always, I got to ask, how are you doing this week, man?
I'm good, man. Looking forward to week 2, see how things play out this week, see who stays strong, who comes out stronger, who falls in week 2, because week 1's week 1, you know. You never know. Week 1, everything could be everywhere, except for your team. I'm sorry. They're just bad.
Hey, come on, give my team a break, guys. I mean, we'll break it down a little bit in a bit. But Kyle, let's start the show off with a new segment, or technically an old segment that we have rebranded, and we're calling it the Big Take. So Kyle, give me your big take. Where are you starting off at?
Actually, I'm gonna start with COG, man, coming out strong. Of course, the Cloud9 game, they weren't they were pretty messy at times, like the matches. I mean, it's the first week, early game jitters, first game jitters. But hey, man, they came out winning, and it looks like we're gonna get the COG that comes out strong usually to compete for that summer split and to try to solidify their spot for Worlds. So I think we're gonna get this COG team. I think we're gonna get a really good showing out of, especially with the changes.
Yeah. The only blemish, but I wouldn't call it too much of a blemish, is Dardoch didn't have the best of games overall, but he did make a big impact. And, obviously this kind of shows the early game working on your kinks with a new guy, especially if you're, think about Xmith, you've been there for so long. This definitely just showed the growing pains. But yeah, coming out 2-0, very surprising. Still surprised that they took that third game against Cloud9. I know that I anticipated that game was going on as I was leaving to go do something with my girlfriend, and I kind of anticipated based off of the beginning of the game. I was like, well, I think Cloud9's got this. And then come to find out that they lost, and I was just like, mind is blown. I'm going to start my big take away, obviously, with my team, Team Liquid. And holy crap, is this team bad?
I am gonna say one thing.
All right.
Go ahead.
Well, I was like, let me just, I guess, kind of start from the groundwork. And we'll go right away with, I am not going to blame this on Golden Glue, because as bad as Golden Glue was, and I will say, like, I had been reading on Twitter all week how people were bashing Team Liquid for basically benching Golden Glue in the second game or the second series, saying, "Oh, you're just continuing to blame Golden Glue." And I just kept screaming out every time I looked at these texts. I was like, "Just look at the stats." It shows that he's not there, right now. It's not to say that he can't be, but I don't think that he needs to be on Team Liquid right now. I think he needs a new place, a new change of scenery, and he needs to start back off in Challenger and work his way up, because that dude has no confidence at the moment.
No.
The person I'm really blaming this on, and it kills me to say this, is Rainover. I mean, my God, the dude had 14 deaths total in both series. Like, he has a 0.7 KDA. Like, my gosh. And I like Rainover. I still think he is actually good. And I still think that he is probably overall one of the top junglers in NA. But the issue seems to be is he can't communicate with his team, or whoever is doing the shot calling right now doesn't know how to keep Reignover from being in bad situations. And that just seemed to be what's happening over and over. However, the bright spots I do want to go to, and as much as some people may disagree with me, I still feel the bright spots that Team Liquid can look at is Piglet is doing great. Matt is looking way better than he did in the spring split. And Lorlo is continuing to do what Lorlo does, which is maintain what he can in the top lane if his team hasn't already given up the game by then. And be competitive, which is what Lorlo does. If we can find a way to get that mid lane and jungler role working, and then obviously work on that mid to late game where we can actually maintain our leads and win, that's where I think the biggest takeaway is, because things improved a little bit in the Echo Fox game 1. As I know I kept saying to you over and over, after we were discussing it on Sunday night, that they did not look bad game 1. However, I will still admit I have not watched game 2 because, again, I was out doing something with
ugly.
and I was going to say, the way I have heard from you and heard from Twitter that it was bad. So holy crap, is Team Liquid bad? And I really feel, as much as Steve does not want to admit it since he is the owner and did a lot to bring Reignover in, you need to find somebody else to play jungler right now. Like, you got to find somebody else. You have to start making some changes more than just that mid lane, because that death total and that KDA tells me everything I need to know that Reignover is not working, and or overall there is no shot calling that is working to keep Reignover from bad situations.
Yep. 3 points. Going off of what you pretty much said. First, I'm going to start with Golden Glue. As and everybody else knows that has listened to the show, I'm not a fan of him. But as Marks said, I was watching something the other day about it. People need to stop giving this dude contracts, and stop giving him contracts out of scrims, just for the time being. Because every time it's like scrim this, scrim that. He's so good in scrims. He's so good in practice. He's so good this, Korea, blah, blah, blah. But he has yet to prove himself on stage, on the LCS stage. He has done nothing for you or anybody. Like, we've got to just finally look at it and say, listen, he may just be a challenger type talent. He just cannot perform on stage. People just need to give that up. My second thing is shot calling. You mentioned shot calling. That, to me, though, is one of the biggest issues right now, it seems to be on this team. They have no true shot caller. That they don't have that leader on that team that can make a call and people will do it. It seems like what it sounds like right now, and if you watch the way the games turned out and how the performance happened, it seems like people were trying to say, like, we should do this, but what they did is they lose a tower, then they play scared, play a little back, play safe, lose another tower, then lose another tower. You gotta make plays. You can't just sit back and let these other teams continue to grow their gold lead because you're so scared to make a mistake. You need to make you need to make these calls. You need to make plays. You need to go in. You need to fight. You can't let teams just slowly milk you down because you're just gonna run scared. And again, mid lane, as you said, that needs to be fixed. It's bad when your best mid laner is your ADC. Because to me, right now on that team, because we haven't been able to see what Link does. Link is still on the roster technically, but they have yet to show him or yet to bring him up to even test him out. Slushy, he did all right, obviously, for his other team he was on, but he's been gone for a while, and he's still not the best, especially with the current mid laners in what they have right now. Piglet's your best mid laner right now, and that's not good. And actually, Piglet tried out to play mid lane for this split during the tryouts. He wants to play mid lane. Why? I get that there's not that big of a time difference, between this little mid season here and the full off season to find somebody. But you got to try something.
You're exactly right, and I will say, or I will give credit to Team Liquid in keeping Piglet at ADC, because again, despite how bad everyone else did, Piglet did pretty damn good in these games. 12-4-4. Obviously, that's still not great when it comes to 4 games, but just the impact that he had in those games that I watched was still like, this is, to form Piglet. But the thing is like, as we know, you can't carry from the ADC role anymore. The meta does not allow ADCs who go off to single-handedly carry their team like they could have in the past. He needs other people to step up. And at the moment, he's got Matt that's definitely benefiting him, which is great to see that Matt looks like he's starting to come back to form. And Lorlo, again, continuing his what he can do. However, Lorlo can't get going because Reignover's dying all the time. And then you got to handicap the mid lane because Reignover's got to continue protecting the mid lane. And he's dying for that, and the mid lane's not getting to going. And so what Lorlo is basically left out on an island where he continues to get bombarded after gank after gank after gank. And it's just like, how can you expect Lorlo to flourish when he's constantly under pressure because mid and jungle can't create their dominance?
Now,
so
really quick, with the shot calling issue going on, as much I'm not blaming Matt, I'm not telling you not to play him, but I've heard from Twitter and Reddit and everything else, I've heard Conquan is a pretty damn good shot caller, and I've heard he's pretty good at knowing the game. Do you think that they should risk taking a chance on Conquan to see if just having like a solidified shot caller in the lineup, not saying Matt's bad, like it's nothing to do with Matt, but just to see if you get a shot caller in there, if it does change things?
No, because here's the thing, and I agree with everything you just said. However, remember I brought up in the first episode, Conquan is not a domestic player. He's Korean. So then you have to figure out, do we play Piglet or Reignover? And that's why I keep saying, it's exactly the solution could be what I had already said, which is get someone else in there for Reignover right now. Mm-hmm. Like, give that dude a break or something, whatever is going on. But Reignover is not able to perform on this team. Give him a break. Once you do that, then yeah, you could possibly bring Conquan in and have the shot calling and stuff. But then the question comes from, at least from my opinion, and I don't know, and maybe the commenters and listeners can let us know, is if Conquan can speak English well. Because you still got to remember, depending on who you bring in the mid lane, if you bring Conquan in, mid laner still has to be a domestic person. So you need to find somebody who's domestic and can speak Korean as well. Or it's going to be an English-speaking person. And then you have an English-speaking person in the mid lane, an English-speaking person in the top lane, and as well, in the jungle position, essentially, because you don't know who you're going to bring in there, because, again, they have to be domestic. Mm-hmm. So, you're going to have 3 people that possibly speak English, so Conquan needs to either be able to shot call in English or be able to communicate in some form or manner at a quick pace for the other guys. I'm not against using Conquan, but then that's where you roll the dice when you have a limit on how many imports you can have on your roster, which we will discuss in a future episode, and I will precurse it by already saying I think that's a good thing. Anyways, Kyle, your big take in EU.
Fnatic, are they back? They looked good, and the reason why I say are they back, and I think they are back, is because their wins were pretty dominant. It wasn't like these close, sloppy wins. First game, little jitters at the start, but once they started, like, a couple minutes in, and the game started going on, they started dominating over Misfits, which is a really strong team. Now, Kakao being gone from Misfits, how much is that hurting? But Maxlor is a really good jungler, so we'll see how that slowly plays out. But overall, though, Fnatic looked really dominant, really good. Reckless just went off, did his thing. That team looks like they're here to have fun and play hard, and that team, I think, could make a big run for that playoffs and to try to go back to Worlds again.
I will say, just after their match with Rokat, Mithy did say that this meta really benefits Fnatic because it's the same meta that was at the very end of last split, and it's really what Fnatic thrives on. So they could be back. Like, this could be the meta that really helps those players mold and push forward. And I will say just quickly, because you talked about Misfits in their Fnatic match, I did think that they looked very poorly. So
Hmm.
I'm very curious to see how they turn out. However, my big takeaway, and this isn't to throw any of these teams under the bus, but it's will these challenger teams transition? Mysterious Monkeys going up H2K. Obviously, that's a very tough matchup, and they did not look very good. And then in Ninja Pajamas, I know we had said heading into this split in our preview show last week that I thought Ninjas in Pajamas would do better than Mysterious Monkeys. However, we did not anticipate Fnatic to come out as strongly as they did. And again, they did not look that good against Fnatic. So it makes me wonder, are we going to see that big drop from the challenger area to these new teams when they get into the LCS? Because obviously I would like to see Ninjas in Pajamas and Mysterious Monkeys hold their own, but it looks like it's going to be yet to be seen, as we need to see them play some of those mid-tier teams um, to kind of balance that all out.
Especially a team like Rocat. I think they could beat a team like Rocat. Well, I will give Mysterious Monkeys though. They came out fighting though, especially the first game. They took the early leads against HUK, and people were like, "Whoa, what's going on here? Look at this team." They came out to fight like everybody thought they would. Like a lot of the games this week, they thought there was going to be quite a bit of fighting. It was ended up being more slow paced, but Mysterious came out to fight. But as you said, it is there are two challenger teams coming up. We always talk about the big gap difference, so it's going to be really interesting to see how big of a gap from them to the top teams, which I think is going to be big, but how big of a gap between them and Rocat, Splice. Even though I think Splice is obviously about the best out of the mid, and then Vitality. Like, can they at least take those spots, which is going to be hard, especially over here, because relegations is still going to be a thing right at the moment.
Especially in EU, where that'll be a thing
Hmm.
moving forward. That's a great part for us to transition into our next topic, which is topic of the show, and that is franchising. I hear you, Kyle, over there already clapping away about this. Kyle, let's talk a little bit about first. Let's talk about franchising as a whole. Then we'll break it down NA and EU on their decisions when it comes to franchising. So first, how do you feel about the thought that NA and LPL in China are going to be franchising their teams starting next year?
I absolutely love it because you're going to bring so much more into the LCS, sponsorships, backings, um, everything. Like, it's just gonna be overall seems like a more solidified, uh, esport. It's gonna be a solidified spot. The teams are going to be able to compete. You're going to be able to see. To me personally, you're going to see more chances take. Especially with teams down towards the bottom, people are going to be like, "Oh, well, they're not going to try harder." Than that. But these teams all want to win. They all want to go to Worlds. They didn't spend hours and hours and hours playing this game to just sit there in last place. They're all going to want to win. But this, to me, actually allows for players that we've been talking about in Challenger and everything else that people want to see that are young talent to develop. I think this is gonna allow these players to develop under these teams. Teams are going to be more willing, especially the mid to the bottom. If things aren't working out, you're going to see these rookies be able to finally, you know, come up and possibly take that spot for a series because the fact that you have no fear that you're going to get you're going to drop out now. Now you can take that risk. You can take risk like that to try out something different if something's not working. Like Team Liquid, for example, because there is no franchising. Like next year, especially if Liquid ends up staying in part of the franchising teams, they could take risk on bringing other players in and not be scared to push people back because they don't have to worry about getting relegated now. They're safe. Like I think it's. I think it's just overall going to be a really good thing. It's going to bring a lot of revenue into the NA LCS. It's going to be really interesting to see Korean players, EU players, especially depending on how long they keep it just NA before they develop it over to EU and everything else, who's going to want to come play for NA now? You're going to get a lot of talent coming in. A lot of old pros, I think, are going to be looking at maybe making comebacks. Not completely comebacks, but, people are going to be looking for spots, even on developmental teams, just to be part of it. Overall, though, I think it's just a really good thing for the league.
I will admit, when we first threw this idea around a few years ago, I think it was in season 2 of our podcast, we talked about the fact of, would it be better if there were no relegations and things like that, or how could they make changes to the challenger scene to help benefit the LCS? And I was against it. I didn't think it was that good of an idea. Only reason being was because I did like the idea of new teams coming in and out and fighting for the new positions, and you bring those different fan bases and things in those natures. But the more I think about the franchising and the more that we have discussed the franchising, the more I also agree that I think it's a beneficial idea. Listening to teams, owners, players, managers, all of them talk about the fact that how often they lose out on some sponsorships because the guys are unsure if that team is going to still be there, in 3 months. That's definitely, obviously, a business model that you can't sustain off of. And we're talking about a professional scene that me and you very much love and enjoy to watch and talk about. Obviously, it's why we started this podcast. We want this to continue and maintain and continue to be flourishing, so we see new talent and new players and teams improve. And the thing is obviously, right now, as you just said, there is not room for error for these teams. If they having one bad week, just for example, the week that Team Liquid just had could ultimately end up losing them of a playoff spot. It also could ultimately be what ends up killing them as they, try to stay out of relegation, which is something I am interested to see how they're going to handle it, leaving out this split, since next year they are going to do the franchising and you have to buy your spot. It's not, those who are there get it. But I look at Team Liquid's roster, and there's one guy on the roster that always intrigues me, and I think a lot of people forget about him because we've seen him, I think, one time, is Arc Second. Arc Second has been on the team for a long time. I think he's a young player. He plays jungle, and all the time, especially right now, in my head, I think, give him a chance, put him in, see if it works and stuff. But I understand where Team Liquid is hesitant, because if they put it in and it's even worse than when Reignover's in there currently, they just now shot themselves in the foot and they start off the season 0-4.
Yep.
And that's something that you have to try to avoid, because then you are just, climbing all season long trying to just avoid that relegation spot. And as you said, it's very hard for a team to want to try something new, try out a new player, grow talent, when the end goal has to be, we got to make sure that we are above relegation. I mean, look at Team Liquid last split. And I know we're harping on, Team Liquid, but currently right now they are the best example. Last split, they made massive changes, essentially, to just try to avoid relegation. And it almost worked out for them. They still obviously stayed up through the relegation tournament. But that just kind of shows where it got to the point where they were so desperate. They went out and, traded essentially for Adrian. And they signed Double Lift. And they moved Piglet to mid lane. And they do all this stuff, just trying whatever can make them stay out of relegation. Teams wouldn't have to do that if they were in franchising. It would be more of, hey, you know what? This team isn't working, but there's this challenger player or this young talent that I think could work for us. Let's bring him on the stage and give him some stage experience, because we're not making playoffs. So let's give him some stage experience and see how things work. Or there's this really good shot caller that plays, jungle in the Challenger series that has never had stage talent. Let's bring him in real quick and give him some stage presence. That would be more beneficial to grow these teams, grow these players, and continue to bring in that fresh talent that we've been dying to see so we can start competing and beating Korea in the world stages.
Yep.
Um, so obviously, aside from the finances, that is massively great for the team.
It's especially because you mentioned about fans. This is gonna allow fans to really find their teams because you can't. It's so hard to become a fan. Like example, I mean, I know Nip has been a franchise that's been around, but Mysterious Monkeys, like, what fans do they honestly have other than the fact that people like their name and kind of like them? But if they're here and gone in one split, you're not gonna build a fan base around that.
Well,
This
and
is
also
gonna
keep in mind
allow,
their fans usually only come from players that are already on
already
the
on
team.
the team, exactly.
And so essentially, you want to build fans that like the team for the
Hmm.
team. So, you know, me and you, we're Chicago Bears fans. We're not, Jordan Howard fans. We love Jordan Howard. And if he went to another team, we may still support him, but it's not like all of a sudden we're like,
We're gonna
well,
be.
forget the Bears. We're, let's say the Miami Dolphins fans now because he goes over there for some reason. No, we're Chicago Bears fans, and that's what you want as a team. So if you have a franchise where it stays stable and you can become fans of that team, then you might not be, as bouncing around because of a guy leaving a team and going to another team. Now you're the fan of that team.
Yep, exactly. It allows more stability with it comes with like, because it's gonna allow merchandising and everything just a lot more, you know, to be a lot more stable, just because of the fact that you're gonna build fan bases around. It may, as you said, start out because oh, this player's gonna be on this team, this player's gonna be on that team. So you may start out that way, but then you may realize like maybe I just like this brand as a whole. Example, Cloud9 is my team. I liked them when High in the Mall came up. It turned into the Cloud9 brand. And even though High and them slowly retired out, I'm still rooting for Cloud9. I'm rooting for, even though, other than Sneaky, that whole team is new. Like, I'm still rooting for Cloud9 because became a fan of that organization. I became a fan of that brand. And this is going to allow that to happen, I think.
And
Overall,
I,
it's going to be really good.
and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a big part of that played into the fact that they were continued to still be that team. It was still
Hmm.
Cloud9. If
Exactly.
it was Cloud9 and they dropped out, but then those guys went to another team or two of them or High, especially because I know you were a big High fan back in the
Exactly.
day.
Hmm.
If High joined another team, you probably still wouldn't be a Cloud9 fan to this day.
No, especially
You
if
would have jumped
Cloud9 wasn't there. Hmm.
exactly. You would have jumped to another team and been like, I'm a whatever High is now. Example, if FlyQuest for some reason happened the year after Cloud9 got up and you became that fan, that again, that kind of shows it's similar to me with my Team Liquid. Obviously, they were Team Curse when I was first a fan of them.
Hmm.
I became a fan of them because of Voyboy and Saint Vicious and Elements, and then Jackie shortly after. And I love those guys, but as they all transitioned away, I still was a fan of Team Curse because they were still there and they were always there, and that's then obviously transitioning to Team Liquid. So yeah, it's a good thing to have that stability for the teams. Now, Kyle, I want you to think deeply about this because me and you are both praising franchising right now. Tell me what's the one thing that you can think of that could be detrimental to having franchising.
Uh,
There's always a con, and I know you got to
I
think
I
hard.
guess as of right now, I would stay still the faith on where all that. I mean, I know they do have a plan, and I'm sure it's going to work. But the one thing about the franchising thing, though, is I still feel that the thing that people have to pay attention to and figure out is the the currency that's coming into the league. I get sponsorships are going to come that should bring in money. Partially, they got now the whole broadcasting rights, which isn't going to be a whole lot, but they're going to have to figure out to make. It's not going to make the big part of there because it's going to be mainly sponsors and stuff that brings in it. But broadcasting rights with I forgot the brand that they're doing it through. But they're like they said, the way that they're going to be able to bring money in that is the only way you're going to be able to do something like that is if you do like a premium package. You're going to still get to stream the game in HD, but if you give people more of a like if you do like player cams, like if you specifically want to watch in your premium content, if you subscribe for the $5 or $6, whatever it is, and you can see a certain fan that you follow, like or a player that you want to follow. Like if you just want to watch, example for me, Jensen in mid lane or Sneaky Cam. Like if I want to watch that specific cam, just extra content, which won't bring a lot in, but I guess just the overall revenue of bringing money into the league, especially because they got to spread that around through each team, is where all that money's. If that money's going to consistently be there, especially at the start, it's going to be hard. And I think that's something that you may have to watch out for.
Well, I will just say, just to play a quick devil's advocate and then give my thing, is you got to remember they did sell their streaming rights to basically the MLB network.
Yeah, I was trying to
So
think about
remember, they have that constant flow of money going to be coming in regardless. But I do think, yeah, there's probably going to have to be some kind of fee added to the streaming, not, that hinders us being able to watch it, but I think it may be for like
just premium.
we could stream in 720, like 720 60p, but to get 1080p you have to pay an extra $1 or something, which I'll be honest, I would be fine with it.
Yeah,
I don't know how many
sports fans, I think true league fans that really get into it like us would do it, but casuals maybe not. But if you add the extra stuff, if you add the extra premium content, maybe like add stats to the side, like some of these other apps do. Like I mean I don't really watch NASCAR, but I know their app I've guessed is really strong where it gives you every stat, every track time, every you could follow your driver and like everything in it, every stat, every speed, everything. Like if you could follow every stat of that player and different premium stuff that you can add onto it, that's how I think you get people to subscribe.
All right, so my biggest issue that I do have with franchising is what do you do now about those young talents? And so hear me out, and this could already be figured out. So again, people watching and listening, comment or share or talk to us on Twitter, so that way you can tell me that I'm wrong. But I don't know if there is necessarily an actual limit to the team's rosters. I mean, I know that they have to have a minimum of 5 players, and then so you have some people that are doing 10-man rosters with having a full 5-man substitutes. Have some doing a 7-man or whatever. But I don't know if there's an actual limit. And so I feel like what could end up having for those franchising is some teams could take advantage of that and start signing a bunch of young talent no matter what, just quickly snatching them up. But then it gets to the point where they have bargaining chips for trades or money or whatever it may be, and that could end up being detrimental to the league. The reason why I bring that up is there is obviously it's not like professional football, basketball, baseball where there's a draft and there's a farm system or whatever. Challenger Series is obviously going to become that farm system, but again, there still is no draft. So how does League handle those young talents to allow for that filtering system to work the way it should be? Because ideally, you don't think teams are going to do that. However, I'm sure there is going to be a few teams that may abuse it, because remember, there were teams that have already been banned from ever becoming existence because of basically towing the line way too much or stepping over the line. So there's going to be a team that could potentially do that. And that's my big question when I look at this is how does Riot now um, monitor that young talent system
Es-
if once it gets to franchising.
Especially because the fact that the top teams, if you finish first, your team's gonna make more money than what the last place team does. So there is still going to be a number, a money difference between first place to last, second to, so on and so forth. There is going to be, each team is going to be granted so much money on where they finish in the standings. So that's another, I guess, benefit for the fact that, of course, people are still going to want that extra money. Just like winning the World Series or Super Bowl, players are going to
Mhm.
be a lot more valuable than what they may or should be. But that can lead into, as you said, stacking younger talent to keep that team making that top money. You
Mhm.
know, and so that I could definitely see that. Unless, like you said, especially the first year, it's going to be so hard because you're going to have 10 challenger teams. Because each team is going to have that system underneath them that they can bring talent in and have talent on. Now, how are they going to figure out what team gets what talent, which like is it like especially current LCS like challenger teams like Temple Storm or like EU United. I mean, they may be able to just buy out a spot, but like
I think we'll see a kind of partnerships develop, so to speak. So like
yeah, like
obviously,
it's got to be a
each
partnership.
team is going to have their own challenger team, but some of those current challenger teams may, we might see Tempo Storm make an announcement of they have now agreed to be um
C9.
the challenger team for C9. Yeah, for example,
Yeah.
that we may start seeing stuff like that where those challenger teams don't lose out on everything now that we're going to franchising. But the LCS team now gets their challenger team like they're supposed to. So that
Um.
would be my only thing with that.
And one last thing before, I mean, unless you have more to add on to the franchising, I do want to ask. Um, we have 10 teams right now. No team is safe. Um, I will give what my opinions, of course, but out of the 10 teams, who do you think is absolutely safe and will be back next season? Who do you think won't
TSM.
be? TSM.
Um, the ones that I think are absolutely safe is definitely TSM and Cloud9
Mm-hmm.
and CLG. Like those ones are not leaving.
Yep.
Um, the other team that I would say is safe, however, because of how they're playing right now, I don't know if Riot's going to look at them differently for it. Um, I would say Team Liquid again, long time standing franchise that's been in the league for a very long time. Um, so that Steve has obviously a good ownership with um, League and Riot, so I would say them. Um, Team Dignitas, I think, is another one that's for sure. I mean, 76ers have money into that team.
Yeah.
They're they're there. Um,
A lot of people have a lot of
Immortals,
backers.
Immortals, I feel is a guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they have professional money into them as well. The there's only to be honest, I'd say
One.
three teams that I have question marks on for sure, and that's Team Envy,
Mm-hmm.
FlyQuest, and Phoenix One.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason I have concern or like question marks around them is FlyQuest. I don't remember who owns them.
Uh,
And
Milwaukee Bucks. The son.
okay,
The owner's
yes,
son does.
yes. So okay, never mind. So FlyQuest I would say is in because again, professional team. I think that Riot wants that money.
Mm-hmm.
Um. So again, for Team Envy, don't remember who owns them. Phoenix One, same with them. Don't remember who owns them. Echo Fox, obviously owned by Rick Fox, and that's a lot of money.
And Rick Fox has seemed to have done and brought a lot to the the whole LCS as a whole already. So.
Correct, and that's why I think again that he's a sure in. Um, but yeah, team. So now that you brought that up, and I totally forgot that the Milwaukee Bucks son did buy Flight. Yeah, so Phoenix One and Team Envy are my two big question marks. But then my bigger question marks come in is who the heck replaces them?
Well,
Uh,
that's gonna be the interesting thing.
yeah, no, that is the very interesting thing.
um.
Uh, Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I was gonna go
I
ahead
was
and name mine.
Go ahead. No, go ahead
All
because I
right.
was going to transition to the next topic. So
To me, TSM C9, and for sure, TSM has to be in. Because if they're not in, you're going to get a lot of backlash and you're going to lose out a lot. TSM has the
I would
most
not want to see that
banners.
firestorm.
No, no.
I would not want
TSM
to see
has the most banners on hanging on your wall. They're safe. Cloud9, second most. They're safe. Ton of backlash. COG,
that.
would say is safe for the most part because of who they are, but they have no money. That's the issue. But to me, I think what happens is COG gets partnered. COG needs to go out there and get backed. Because if you get back, COG, if somebody comes in and says, hey, we'll back you guys so you stay in, they only have to pay the 2 million instead of the whole 5 million to take your spot. So I think COG will find backers to keep COG brand in, but I don't think they're 100% safe. I think they're about 75%. And then
See,
to
I
me,
would
everybody
disagree.
else is about 50-50. I know they all have money in there, but let's be honest, Riot is going to get anywhere from like to 100 applications of people with money that are going to want in on this now. Because I mean,
Yes.
I've heard stories of NFL owners, NFL, baseball MLB owners, like just ton of professional money that want to get in it. Now it's up to Riot if they want, like, and of course they all got to put down how you're going to market your team, your business plans, what are you going to invest in, like who you going to bring in, like are you going to bring in people that know what they're doing in esports. So there's going to be a lot of questioning in there. So I feel like some of these teams with backers already that should feel a little bit safer, like Dig, Fox stuff, because they've already got a head start on that. But I think a lot of those teams are 50-50 because of the fact that anybody with money can come in and put this crazy business plan together that blows Riot out of the water and says you can do it. But Envy to me is the one for sure. I think there's gone.
I'm going to tell you right now, though. I will say this: I completely disagree with CLG because one, I don't fully agree that they have no money because they still do have money. It's why they continue to be a really marketable team. And when you look at their sponsors with Corsair, Intel, iBuyPower, the DX Racer chairs, like they definitely have enough money to sustain and be in there.
But not with
And
these other
here's the
teams
other
that they're
thing that
bringing in,
also
though.
plays a factor that I think a lot of people overlook is CLG is the oldest active team
Hmm.
there is. Like TSM was
Dig
made
needs to be there too.
after CLG.
That's why I
You
think
know,
Dig's pretty safe too, at least the brand name.
well, Diggs for sure safe because you got to remember again, Milwaukee Bucks or not Milwaukee Bucks, the Philadelphia
Hmm.
76ers paid into that, and Riot was overjoyed when that happened. What makes you think that they're going to be like, you know what? Now that we're going to franchising, sorry 76ers, we're gonna
The New
push you
England
out.
Patriots come in and buy a spot.
They'll they'll take out then Team Envy loses their spot and the New England Patriots will take that spot. CLG, Dignitas, TSM, C9
See,
are sure guaranteed. And then again for me, I think that
according
75% you said that's more TL for me at the moment, just because of the way that things have been acting. But again, long-standing franchise. I don't think. Again, the bigger picture that you have to keep in mind is not just what has money and what's coming in, but it's what fan bases do we have? Because I'm telling you right now, you lose CLG, despite the fact that obviously, arguably TSM and Cloud9 are the largest fan bases. CLG
is up
is
there too.
it, if they're not actually number two, like over Cloud9, then there are literally maybe a handful of fans right behind them because CLG still has a lot of fans. And then again with Team Liquid, as much as people have been, scratching their heads over this crap for a while, Team Liquid has a very large fan base as well. And so losing those teams or axing those teams out definitely is going to put a sour mouth even on the most hardcore of fans of League of Legends.
Yeah, like I said, I well, what I've heard from listening to Marks and multiple different like people interviews about franchising and who they like and who they don't that think they're safe and stuff. COG's been one of the most questionable ones out of the group, like because of the fact that they said especially since they're in the end, they're behind the scenes. They say COG really does not have money like that. They have sponsors and stuff, but not enough that supports them like, these other like C9 or TSM or anything like that. And I don't know how true it is, but I've heard from like those same group of guys and stuff that there's problems with the uppers in COG, not necessarily like the coaching and stuff, but when you get higher up in a group of people not being around when they're supposed to, showing up, they say they're going to be here to put down this proposition and they don't, and stuff like that. So that makes you wonder. But overall though, I think for the most part, COG brand is safe. It's just a matter of who comes and
See,
backs them.
and that's what I'm saying when I talk about 100% safe. That brand will be there no matter what.
Yeah,
Uh,
even if they get bought out, I think COG stays COG.
correct. I think that is there no matter what. Um, and I'm not discrediting the fact, with obviously the people you're listening to and stuff, like they obviously have more of an in than me and you, but I still think even if they don't have the money necessarily to buy their spot, Riot will find a way to make it
They'll
so
get
they can get
backers.
that
Like I
spot.
said, if I'm a someone trying to invest into L esports, I'm gonna save the 3 million and say we'll just back your brand. And
Mhm.
if we feel like we need a different type of ownership or partnered ownership to be more in control, then so be it. I'm gonna spend 2 million over 5 million.
Exactly. All right, Kyle. So now let's transition a little bit. We're still talking franchise, but obviously EU has, at least for the moment, already said that they are not going to be doing the franchising. And
hmm
so, Kyle, I got to ask you, um, what do you make of that decision?
Reckless, come on over. Perks, Sven, come on over.
By the way, dog, Zyra is making fun of the show.
No, I think though overall, I think it's gonna somewhat hurt them. I mean, not completely, but I think you're going to see a lot of players over there that has already came out on Twitter and stuff talking about how they love what's going on in NA. I think you're going to see a lot of uproar and backlash if they don't end up doing it at least after a year of NA doing it to see how it works and stuff. I think if they don't do it, like, because next split to 2018 is when we're starting in NA. If they don't do it in 2019, you're going to see a lot of top tier talent leaving and come trying to get on the franchises in NA because I think that just a safety net for these players, they're going to want that safety net. They're going to want to get paid, and all the revenue is going to be coming into NA. Like a ton of revenue should, anyways, with big sponsors, more overall League of Legends sponsorships. As
Hmm.
a whole, you're going to get a lot more shared revenue through each team in NA than you're going to get in EU. So, I think if you don't do it, NA's going to take EU should take a hit on some players that people are going to be like, wait, why are you going to NA? Well, because I'm safe. I have a safety net. My career feels a little bit safer.
Yeah, no, that safety net is going to be very comforting for players, and I agree. We might see quite a bit of people leave. However, I will say, um, you know, with EU, people are used to teams going up and down with the Barclays Premier League.
Yep.
Obviously, that is a vastly different money, franchise, and the championship series, which is technically the next step down from the Barclays Premier League, still has quite a bit of money, but obviously
Exactly.
nothing like the Barclays Premier
and
League.
and they have
Uh,
with football, and they also have that parachute on if a team does get dropped. There's still that safety money. I believe they got some kind of system in there that the money invested in that team is still safe.
oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like it's a vastly different system, but I think teams are used to that up and down. So we might still have the teams that or the players that want to stay there because of that competitive nature. Um, but yeah, I'm not for sure if this will be the best move for them only because of the fact of LPL and NA doing this move. It makes me think that, as you just said, we could see kind of a, we saw the Korean exodus after, season 3 Worlds.
Hmm.
We could be seeing an EU exodus with, the top tier players looking to go elsewhere where they have that safety net or they have that extra money to go. Um, I've already been surprised that some of these top EU players haven't left just yet because of the money that is flowing into the North American market. But, more power to them.
Yeah,
But
I
I agree. I think if they, knowing that they're not doing it in this season, 2018, this next one coming up, I would be very, very surprised if it doesn't get enrolled in the 2019,
so will I.
or at the very least, if it doesn't get announced to get enrolled in the 2020. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's like
exactly, exactly. So they got
it,
time to
it may
plan.
not have to be right. It may not be over rolling out in 2019, but it could be announced in 2018 that it's going to be rolled out in 2020.
Yeah.
I would be very, very surprised if
Oh,
it doesn't.
so would I. Especially like I said, the safety net's a big thing for a lot of these players. I mean, you may not get big changes. Like I was teasing about Sven and Perks and stuff. Some of those players may stick where they're at, of course. Just like Faker will stick in Korea. You know what I mean? Like he's not going to go to the LPL just because it's franchise. There's certain things like that, and there's certain teams like that that's going to have a lot of money to play the big players. But
Mhm.
when you start going down the ladder of those big players, like about the next tier of players, there's no guarantee that they'll stay where they're at.
Mhm. Yeah. So I do want to ask you though, is there one player for sure that you think, regardless, is going to stay EU no matter what? Like if they now keep in mind, I know obviously there's a League of Legends players typically have a short career period, but let's say they're of the current roster, all these guys are going to play for 15 years. What is one player that you say guaranteed no matter what will never leave EU?
Reckless, Fnatic, man,
I
he's
can see
gonna
that.
stay, live and die with Fnatic. You know,
But he did leave.
yeah, and he said that was one of the biggest things. As we all, you and I watched the video on it.
Yeah.
His home is Fnatic, and that's where he's gonna stay, and no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, I agree, but I will say, I just to play that devil's advocate, he did leave. So
No, no, I know he did, but to counter that again, we did see his response. But just really quick though, over in Korea, players like Easy Hoon, players that have been, you know, uh, they've been that sub or that guy that kind of go in and out every once in a while. Those type of players, now that there's that safety net in NA, those are the type that you're gonna see coming over. I mean, Bang when was Bang right? That is that who subbed for G2 that destroyed Rocat in mid lane.
yeah,
The
no,
another
yes,
another
yes.
guy, or was it the
I'll look
jungler?
that up real quick.
It was a jungler in the mid lane. I cannot recall which one it was, but one of the guys that subbed for G2 was the sub in Korea, and he destroyed. He's a really good, talented player. A player like that would be great to come over to fill in a role. One of the import spots.
Blank.
Blank. There we go.
Bang is a Korean player that played for SKT1, but yes, blank.
Yeah, like players like that are going to have their opportunity then and want to come over to a system like that.
I mean, you're right. So all right. I mean, I know we both already said this, but over under EU EU rolls out franchising 2019. All right, sorry. Let me take that back. EU rolls out franchising 2020.
At least
So
by
under
2012.
would be 2019.
Over
Over
would be
would be
2012.
past 2020.
Uh,
I say under. I say under.
so under is at least by next year or by 19.
2019. That's why I changed it up because we already know they're not doing it in 2018.
2018,
So
yeah.
that's why I was like,
That at least gives an announcement. And yeah, I go under too, because
you
in
go on.
18 they at least get the announcement that hey, EU is going to implement that. Especially if next split, especially in spring split, if they see, depending on how much revenue they make within just that first spring split, like I think EU will look at that and be like, yeah, we need to implement this as well. Especially because we're not going to lose players. Especially once rumors start flying out that certain talent wants to leave to come to NA, they're going to want to keep those players. Now the issue with EU though is depending on the backers for teams over there, they don't have the backings that NA teams do.
Hmm.
Who's buying those teams? Teams like Shulk come back in because they got a safety net. They're already been in it once. Why not come back? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Though there's gonna be a lot of teams bought out over there though.
Well, I think also PSG will for sure
Oh
be
yeah,
up there. I
that's
mean,
why I think like a team like E United or Goldcoin can possibly be in one of the teams in NA next year because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they got a lot of money from a lot of different places. What I've heard, anyways,
I'm
that
gonna,
they
I'm gonna
can that
look
they
up quick.
that they could possibly take spots in the LCS. But overall, though, I think EU is going to have a lot of teams bought out because there's not, other than Fnatic, maybe G2 now, especially because the G2 brand has become what it is. There's going to be a lot of buyouts if they implement the franchising.
Hmm. Let's see here. NRG sold their spot to J2K Esports and Technology, which is now Goldcoin
Yep.
United.
There you go.
J2K is a New York real estate agent, James Kuhn, and his son. They're also presidents of the Newmark Group, Knight Frank real estate firm. No previous experience in esports. So, I mean, when you hear real estate,
That's money.
typically that's money. So,
Money. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how much money, but that typically does mean
I
money.
mean, they bought
So,
a spot in a challengers, and usually the buy-in, they're
yeah,
gonna
but
put
a
some
challenger
money.
spot
It's
usually
not a
is
lot,
too much.
but
So that's why I'm saying how much, unsure,
yeah.
but it definitely means at least some money. Um, Kyle, the one last topic we want to talk about before we start to wrap up this show is the competitiveness of NA and EU. So the only reason we're bringing this up is because last spring split we both sat on this show saying, "Oh man, this is gonna be close. These teams are stacked from top to bottom." I think we had like two teams that we said would still struggle, and I think that was Echo Fox and Team Envy. But we are like top to bottom, these teams are stacked, and we saw it was kind of Cloud9 and TSM, and then there was a slight drop off, but there was a drop off
Mm-hmm.
to Phoenix One, and then there was a big drop off,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
it was just like everybody else. Um, EU, I would roughly say it was about the same. We kind of saw G2 at the top with Unicorns of Love, slight drop off to H2K, even though I think H2K just had some growing pains. Um, Misfits kind of right there with H2K, and then it was like drop off. So uh, week one's in the books. Let's take Team Liquid out of the equation for the moment. Um, how close do you think competitiveness is in NA and EU at the moment when it comes to top to bottom?
Top to bottom in NA, well, top to ninth in NA, I feel like has become a lot closer. I think this because everybody has a split under their belts. Team like Dig is, you know, grew as the time gone on. Phoenix One though has gone down to me. They look pretty bad, and I'm kind of worried about that team for some reason. But overall though, I think this split is going to be a lot closer. CLG is going to compete. Immortals looks. I mean, it's only 1 week, but with Xmithy in there instead, looks so much better. Just like CLG with Dardock in there, I think is going to benefit. Echo Fox, they looked pretty damn good for being what they are. Froggen looked to be top notch. Like he was making some ridiculous plays. TSM, we're gonna get the same TSM, but I don't think they're gonna be as dominant as they were. Um, as I said last podcast, I think things people like COG is going to, like make it hard for them. And I think they're going to lose some games to other teams that they're not going to really think that they're going to lose to. Um, Overall, though, I think it's going to be pretty top-notch competitiveness, a little bit closer than last year. At least there's going to be at least five. I would say, like at least you're going to get the top five, top six that are going to be closer, and then there may be that slight drop off, but not as much as it was
Mhm.
last year. EU, I think is almost the same, except you add Fnatic in the equation. EU, I still think Rocat's absolutely terrible. I think Rocat's like, well,
Hey, they did beat G2 though pretty handily in game one. Let's give them that benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying they're great, but they did
they
give
looked
a
pretty
hurt.
bad after that, though. After
I
Rogue G2 woke up, it was like,
I
no.
know. I'm just saying though, they did give a hurting to G2 in game one.
But other than HUK, Unicorns, G2 Fnatic, and then you're gonna get the Misfits, Splice, and then the rest. Like that, I think that's what that's gonna end up being. Cause I mean, Rocat maybe not OG, aka Origin. TL is Origin of
Whoa, whoa,
the way
those
that's
be
going
some
now, man.
fighting words, man.
The way that's going right now, man. It's the kind of an
Those be
Origin
some
situation
fighting
going
words.
on. But I think the drop off is bigger in EU than it is NA this year.
And let me start off with my analysis. If you always are going to have, though,
You're
a
gonna always
top
have.
team to the bottom team, you know what I mean? Like, you're always going to have a team that has a losing record or doesn't win very many games. But we're talking about the overall competitiveness of each game, of like how close these
I
games are
think
going
it'll be
to be.
closer.
And I agree with you in some aspects for NA and some aspects for EU, but not totally. Now, I agree with you more at EU. I do think that there is going to be that drop off as we really see when it comes to competitive nature. However, I do think Rocat is a little bit better than what they anticipate, like what you're giving them credit for, because again, they did give a hurt to G2 Esports in the first game. Again, that was subs, and their first game was with the subs.
And they still lost against subs.
I will get that, but at the same time, these are no pushover subs. Like these,
There's
blank.
no expect. There's no. You had no top side for G2.
But
No
Lulex,
top
Lulex.
side.
Let's be honest here though. Lulex, a person who has stuck around for a long time, was a top tier jungler in EU for a while. You cannot overlook that. Sendu, I'll give you credit on that one. That dude, obviously, no one that I know of. Um, Still played fairly well. Blank, however, as much as he is playing in the Challenger Series, he did play over in Korea for Jin Air, Green Wings, and Jin Air is not a pushover team. So,
No,
like, that just kind of shows the pride there.
but
Um,
this is. He came the night before. They called him up and said, "Hey,
I'm
we
still
need you
saying
to
that,
play."
yeah, because I know, but I'm just saying that still doesn't, like, gives the credit to what I'm saying, and the fact that they still played fairly well against G2 Esports. But again, I'm not giving them that much credit. It's why I still feel there's a fall off. Overall, yeah, I think we're going to see the same kind of teams up to the top, except, as you said, add Fnatic to that list, and then we're going to see that drop off. I hope that there's more competitiveness, but can't guarantee that. When it comes to NA, um, I feel Team Liquid will figure it out, but they're still going to be number 10. Right now they're that bad. But again, I didn't get to see these games too closely, but Phoenix One did win one game in each of their series. So though they're 0-2, it wasn't like they were swept in those games. So I'm still going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I think they're going to be a little bit better. Remember, they did have to make some offseason roster changes, so it's not like it's the same exact team from the NA split. But I do think you're going to see some more competitiveness towards the top, but I still think you're going to find that gap once you get to the teams that aren't in playoffs. And that's where I think – that's why I agree with you where I think there is more competitiveness in NA at the moment. But I feel like once you get past the playoff spot, that's where we're actually going to see that drop. And it's not a 1 through 9 where everyone's close. I think it's a 1 through 6-ish, and then that 7, 8, 9 is kind of where we're going to see that drop. Who do I think is going to be in that drop off at the moment? I'm not 100% sure, But I mean, definitely Cloud9 is not going to continue to be sitting
No,
at the bottom of
no.
the standings.
Um,
But came out, just to give a quick example, Team Dignitas last split, we gave them all high and mighty, thought this roster was great, and they came out week 1 and dominated, and me and you kind of crowned them as number 3 in the podcast heading into week 2.
um,
In the podcast heading into week 3, we were like, this team may not be as good as we thought they were, and then they just continued to fall, and then they made it. They figured it out towards the end, but we are going to have those teams that week 1 come out, win, dominate, and we're like, man, they're right back at it. And let's wait till week 2, week 3 before we start saying that they're fully competitive from 1 to 9.
I will say one thing about my team, Cloud9. I think the thing that has scared me the last couple splits actually, even the split that they did really bad, that they had to really fight their way to stay. Even though they did end up reverse sweeping and making Gauntlet and everything else, that team to me lacks improvement. They hit a spot, and then once something changes, then they improve. Like, they weren't good until Riot said no more lane swapping, and then they lane swap, then they're suddenly good again. Like, but after that though, they have yet to improve from what they are. Like, I don't see them getting better ever. Like, they could. That's why they can never beat TSM, is because they can't improve.
Wow.
They can't make that next step, and that really
Well,
worries me.
team.
I know they are. I know they are. But that's my biggest gripe about my team, as I feel like they just can't seem to improve from where they're ever at. Like, they just don't seem to get better. I mean, they're still good enough to compete and make playoffs and everything else. Don't get me wrong, they're my team. But I just feel like this just can never get that improvement.
Well, we'll find out as these weeks roll on. But Kyle, we've been talking for a long time.
Yes.
It is time to start wrapping up this show. So, Kyle, we're going to end the show just with our games to watch, NA and EU. Kyle, what is the biggest game you're looking forward to for EU in week 2?
I'm going straight to that G2 Fnatic. Like, it's going to be a really good test for seeing where the top team, which everybody feels should be the #1 team overall, G2, against a really strong looking Fnatic team that, as you said, meta really fits behind. That's going to be a really fun game to watch. It's going to be a really good stepping stone for Fnatic. Are they going to be able to compete against G2 for that spot, or are they still that big gap difference between the two?
I'm going to go Misfits versus Rocat, and the only reason is because I just thought Misfits looked really bad in week 1, and so it makes me think of how much does Cacao not being on the team make that team worse. And then again, it makes me go, okay, after what Rocat did to G2, even with the backups in game 1, I know games 2 and game 3 did not go as very well for Rocat, but it makes me go, if Rocat beats Misfits, then holy crap, what is this Misfits team doing? So that's why that is my big game to watch. And it could be a slaughterfest, which is what I'm kind of expecting it will be, with Misfits, dominating. But just with the way week 1 performances went down, I'm not so certain Misfits is as good of a team as we saw in the spring split as they will be in this summer split. Kyle, NA, what you watching?
TSM COG, man. COG looked really good. TSM looked pretty good, but they looked also pretty meh at times in those matchups. And I think that's good, especially if COG is back for the summer split to compete. That's going to be a really good game. And random mention really quick. I believe out of the top 4 teams last split, they go 1 or 2 and like 14 or 13 or something like that. It was something ridiculous. Like the top of the boards only won like 1 or 2 games total. It was bad for the top 4 teams.
Ooh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I would definitely go that same game. However, just to be different, I'm actually going game 1, Phoenix 1 versus Cloud9, and that's just because both these teams 0-2 currently, not where they want to be. Which team can right the ship, right off the bat on week 2, and which one starts 0-3, as we had already alluded to, starting off 0-3, and if you possibly start 0-4, you have now put yourself in a big hole as
Yes.
you climb that standing. So neither of these teams want to be 0-3, and so I think that we might see some guns a-blazing in this. Kyle, our final segment, guys, and we're going to start keeping a running list of how we do, is we are doing our pick'ems. So, Kyle, tell me, who is your guaranteed win? And I guess first, tell me where your guaranteed win's coming from, NA or EU. Who you
NA.
got? Okay, who? Well, I'm just
Go
let
ahead.
me lay out the groundworks, man. I'm trying to get the listeners involved.
Go ahead.
So tell me where it's coming from, who you got, and then how many games it goes. So go.
All right. I guarantee win. I'm going NA. Cloud9 versus Phoenix 1, and I think it's going to go the limit. But I think Cloud9 is going to come out a lot stronger this week. Impact is back from his vacation, which is his first time going home, I've heard, and vacation since he's been in the league. Like, it's been a ridiculous amount of time. So that's a lot on one player. But
Mm.
he finally took his vacation. That's why Ray played the entire time. So Impact is back for this week. They need to win. Impact is playing, and he's going to impact that game, and C9's taking it.
Oh, the puns, the puns. All right, I'm gonna give my guaranteed real quick, and I'm also going NA, and I got CLG over Echo Fox. So both teams played really well in week 1. Makes me wonder, obviously, who is that much better than the other. And currently, I think CLG is more legit, and Echo Fox I still have question marks on. Can they sustain this? Because as I said, even in every split, we have a team that gets guns a-blazing week 1 and then starts to fall off. So, like, if Echo Fox pulls this out, awesome. Then maybe they have finally figured it out and righted the ship. But I think CLG is more likely to be doing that. And I do also have them going full 3 games and CLG taking it 2-1. So, Kyle, this one, for the listeners that really want to pay attention to this is what we are calling our upset pick. So this just essentially means a pick of a team that is worse off in the rankings beating another team that is currently better than them in rankings. So Kyle, who obviously your upset pick is coming from EU, but what team do you got winning and how long does it go?
Um, I actually am going to go with uh, the Mysterious Monkeys over Splice. Spice has been very, very meh as of late. Even last split, I think they're a lot better team than they are. I think they really could be really good. But the way Mysterious Monkeys came out, guns blazing, wanting to fight, 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 I think could really throw off Mysterious Monkeys, and I think potentially could end up winning that, or will win that, I should say, since it is my upset pick.
All right, and then how many games does it go?
I think it's gonna go the limit still.
Limit still. All right.
2-3.
So I got my upset pick is I got in EU Ninjas in Pajamas taking out Misfits, and that's just because again I do not after that week 1 I do not have a lot of faith in Misfits at the moment. I do hope that they right the ship because I still am a Power of Evil fan and Hansama fan. I really like Hansama. But at the same time, I love Nagne. I really like Nagne, and I hope that he does well. So I got them going the limits as well. So 2-1. So just to recap real quick, in Kyle's guaranteed, he has C9 over Phoenix 1 going the full limit 2-1. And in his upset, he's got Mysterious Monkeys versus Splice, beating them with a 2-1. And for myself, I got CLG over Echo Fox 2-1 and Ninjas in Pajamas over Misfits 2-1. That almost sounds like a movie. Ninjas in Pajamas and Misfits. That's interesting. All right, so we are giving each other a 2-0 score in week 1 because of our issues with our podcast that we had. However, we got through this entire podcast. So, Kyle, this is our first full video. Everyone,
Yes.
go and check out. So thank you all for listening to this episode. We are going to end it here. We have much, much more to discuss all season long. So be sure to continue to come back here and check everything out. You can watch this over on YouTube, which is youtube.com/press start, if I remember correctly. And if not, I will make sure that happens. If you can't find it over there or don't like to watch the video and just want to listen to this as you're doing something, you can also find this on SoundCloud, which is also on the Press Start channel. If you want to get involved in the show, you can follow us on Twitter, and you can find me on Twitter at jculver28. That is JCULVER28. You can also find Kyle on Twitter at
TFL Kyledoom. That's TFLKYLEDOOM.
And be sure to follow us on there and then tweet us about the show, and we will answer any questions you have or just give you guys a shout out when it comes to the show. Also, real quick, while I'm thinking about it, and I'm going to scroll through to find this real quick. We did have somebody that did contribute to the show over on the League of Legends forums, and I do want to just give him a quick shout out when I find his name. So give me a second, guys, because I did say that I was going to give him a shout out, and so I want him to know that we did indeed give him a shout out. And that dude's name is, oh man, I knew it was going to be something like this. Bakurayu. Bakurayu, thank you for contributing your thoughts on last week's episode. And so you can join Bakurayu by commenting on the YouTube channel or on the SoundCloud, or again tweeting at us. We definitely love to get you guys involved in the show. But for the last time on this episode, I am one of your co-hosts, Jeremy Culver, a.k.a. Darsay.
And I'm Kyledoom, Gloria.
Be sure to tune back in next week as we continue to bring you the news from the Rift.